This guy going? He's on the taxiway.
At San Francisco International Airport, Air Canada Flight 759 is getting closer to midnight. The pilots can end the day with one more simple landing. They are unaware that the airport appears significantly different than it usually does. They can now land on runway 28R, which is adjacent to runway 28L. But that evening, runway 28L was closed for maintenance, and the lights had been turned out. However, because both of the pilots have previously landed at this airport and were expecting to see two parallel runways, they misjudge and believe that 28L is the middle runway. They mistake runway 28R for the taxiway located to the right. 4 other planes are waiting to take off on that same taxiway: a Boeing 787, 2 additional United flights, Philippine Airlines 115, an Airbus 340, and United 1. There are more than 1,000 people on board, and the Air Canada flight is directly in their direction. A NOTAM contained information regarding the runway closure. These are airmen's notices that provide an overview of any noteworthy flight-related information. However, these lists are usually rather lengthy, many pages. Furthermore, it can be challenging to identify the information that is truly pertinent to the journey. The runway closure escaped the aircraft crew's notice. The pilots were authorized to do what is known as a visual approach. This implies that they can manually align the aircraft with the runway and direct it in accordance with their observations. Given the clear weather, the visual approach is the standard protocol. Because of the history of landings on false runways and even taxiways, cautious vehicle pilots typically use instrument assistance to support their approach. In this instance, they might have verified that they were indeed on the correct course by using runway 28R's instrument landing system, or ILS for short. The navigation receiver needs to be tuned to the runway's frequency in order to turn on this system. Normally, this is done automatically by modern flight management systems, but in this instance, it needed to be done manually, and the first officer neglected to do it for some reason. It's been a hard day for the cockpit staff. Their inner clock is already set to free past midnight because they are from Toronto, Canada, and these errors have been attributed to exhaustion and overconfidence. Canadian pilot fatigue standards were laxer than those in the United States, and for the following 19 hours, the flight's pilot did not take a meaningful break. Air Canada is getting closer to tragedy, as nobody noticed that the aircraft was positioned for the taxiway. At this airport, the best flight path for the visual approach approaches from the right at a small inclination. This was done to lessen noise pollution by forcing incoming planes to keep farther away from the bay's west side. Consequently, it is common for airplanes to seem somewhat off-center from the tower's point of view relative to the runway centerline.
Air Canada 759 confirms clear to land runway 28 right. There is no one on 28 right, flight view.
It took the tower controller approximately 5 seconds to answer the call, according to the voice recording in the tower.
This guy going? He's on the taxiway. Air Canada go around.
In the go around, Air Canada 759.
759, looks like we're lined up.
At this point, there was just one controller in charge of the traffic. The ground traffic is normally handled by a second ground controller, but the tower controller frequently works both frequencies at night when things are less hectic. Listening in on this conversation with Air Canada were the pilots of United Flight 1, who were standing first in line on taxiway Charlie. Most likely, they were perplexed as to why Air Canada continued to deviate so greatly from the center line. They were quick to speak out, saving a second by not even saying their own call sign when it became apparent that the plane was headed toward the taxiway.
Flight heading 280, climb maintain 3000.
Heading 280.
The crash we just witnessed might have been the biggest in the history of general aviation. Only a few meters separated Air Canada 759 from the waiting aircraft's tail fins.
Good evening, Air Canada 759 with you. Have a bridge visual to your right.
The actual video of the incident demonstrates how near the planes were. The National Transportation Safety Board conducted a thorough investigation and issued a long list of suggestions, many of which have already been put into practice. When a neighboring runway is blocked at San Francisco, visual approaches are no longer permitted at night. Furthermore, until the late-night arrival rush ends, 2 air traffic controllers must remain on duty. The event turned into a startling reminder of the risks associated with miscommunication at airports. However, with the extraordinary number of near misses at U.S. airports this year, one had to wonder if enough lessons had actually been learned. 2 aircraft nearly collided at JFK Airport in New York City on January 13th, 2023. Flying along Taxiway Bravo, American Airlines Flight 106 was approaching from the northwest. They were instructed to taxi along Bravo and then turn onto Kilo to reach the departure end of runway 4L, where they would take off.
Go on to your right, Air Canada 759.
Take note that the pilot only read back the taxi route, not the runway assignment. This is only a small break from protocol, which the controller waved off, something that could turn out to be harmful. When they arrived at that crossroads, Delta Airlines Flight 1943 had just obtained its final clearance and was prepared for departure on runway 4L.
And Tower, just want to confirm this Air Canada 759. We see some lights on the runway there. Across the runway, can you confirm a clear to land?
American Airlines 106 is told to turn at Kilo while it continues to taxi.
Air Canada 759, confirmed clear to land runway 28 right. There is no one on 28 right, flight view.
However, they taxi straight forward onto Juliet, crossing the same runway as the Delta flight, rather than making a right onto Kilo. It's unknown why the American Airlines pilots chose to continue taxiing straight ahead. Runway 31L is frequently used for JFK departure operations. It's possible that the pilots thought they would take off from that taxi path because they were so accustomed to it. The fact that the wind was currently blowing at 340 degrees with 18 knots and 24 knot gusts could also have pre-programmed them to think they were leaving 31L. These conditions would have favored runway 31L for departure. For operational reasons, however, the airport was using runway 4L for departure. Also noteworthy is that both flight crews could not hear each other. American 106 was on the ground frequency, while Delta 1943 was on the tower frequency. They were talking to different controllers and did not have a mental picture of what the other one was doing. Thankfully, just seconds after the mistake, the tower controller notices what's happening and reacts extremely well.
Okay, Air Canada 759.
The Delta aircraft lands around 1,000 feet short of the Juliet intersection. Additionally, no one was hurt. Runway incursions are categorized by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration based on their kind and severity. In addition to the invasions that truly cause an accident, there are 4 more categories: mistakes that never presented a security danger, near misses where a collision was narrowly avoided, and close calls. The JFK incident qualified as Category B due to its extreme severity. It is evident from the data that there have been less significant events during the previous 20 years. Although there were 22 Category A occurrences in 2007, for the previous 10 years, there had never been more than 9 of these accidents annually. Regarding Category B invasions, a comparable pattern is apparent. Even though the JFK event brought airport safety to the attention of a big portion of the media, it will only be 3 weeks until there is another near miss, possibly the scariest one yet. Early in the morning, Flight FedEx 1432, a Boeing 767 cargo airliner, arrived in Austin from Memphis. There's a light layer of fog, maybe 1,000 feet deep, but quite dense, as is so often the case in Austin. They will have to plunge through it to make their landing, but for now, they're enjoying a clear sky high above that layer of fog.
Where's this guy going? He's on the taxiway.
Due to the poor visibility, FedEx 1432 was forced to use a Category 3 instrument approach, which is a procedure used in extremely low visibility and with clouds that almost reach the ground. In these types of approaches, the aircraft's auto-land system is used, and the flight crew only has to ensure that all systems are operating correctly. This is nothing out of the ordinary for them.
Air Canada go-around.
In the go-around, Air Canada 759.
The visibility in feet at 3 separate positions along the runway, near the touchdown point, the middle, and the end, is indicated by the RVR value provided by the tower controller. The ILS transmitter is located at the end of the runway, and the term passing 5.4 inches indicates that they are 5.4 miles from it. Southwest 708 makes a call at this same minute.
That looks like we're lined up. Flight heading 280, climb maintain 3000.
The tower controller intends for the Southwest flight to take off on the same runway as the FedEx flight before the FedEx plane lands. 3 miles is typically a comfortable spacing to let a departure slip in front, and the phrase traffic on 3 Mile Final is a heavy 767 is to alert the Southwest crew to the incoming FedEx plane, which requires them to make a swift departure. However, things take longer than expected, and as the FedEx plane enters the fog layer and can no longer see anything out of their cockpit windows, their distance to the runway has reduced to just 1.2 miles, and they are starting to get nervous about the Southwest plane staying on the runway.
Heading 280, 3000, Air Canada 759.
The tower cleared SW 708 for takeoff 60 seconds ago. However, it appears they are still waiting at the threshold. While there isn't a set time limit for initiating the takeoff roll, pilots are expected to complete the takeoff quickly.
United 1, Air Canada flew directly over us.
FedEx is descending into the fog layer in the meantime, focusing hard to find the approaching lights that appear. The fog starts to lift at a height of about 150 feet, and they are able to see SW 708's lights, which are still rolling on the runway but moving extremely slowly. They start a go-around right away and speak with the SW crew directly.
Squawk, this United 1, Air Canada flew directly over us. Yeah, I saw that, guy.
The tower misinterpreted the message and thought it was from Southwest, telling them to cancel their takeoff run. This led to the miscommunication. But it's likely that the Southwest crew had already exceeded their V1 speed, so it would have been risky to deny the takeoff. They merely gave a negative response because they were busy. This exchange demonstrates how fast things may become muddled. The two aircraft approach one another within 100 feet, but the FedEx plane outclimbs the leaving Southwest aircraft. Although it's normally forbidden for one aircraft to communicate with another, the FedEx crew's actions demonstrate how serious the situation was. Once the tower controller resolved the conflict, he resumed active control and sent directives to both aircraft that kept them apart.
759, contact NorCal 135.1. We'll catch you in a couple minutes.
In this kind of situation, two airplanes should never get this near. Simultaneously, the sequence of events indicates that multiple techniques were successful in preventing a collision. The FedEx crew acted quickly to maintain their separation from the other aircraft, whether it was due to a visual view of the Southwest on the runway or a warning from the TICA system.
35.1, I guess, 759.
Now the one we're going to get you going here in just...
Did FedEx make the right choice by letting Southwest pass them on a 3-mile final? Looking back, the likely answer is no. Especially not during a period of extremely light traffic, when a mere 2-minute hold for SW-708 would have eliminated any tension and danger from the scenario. Conversely, pilots with Southwest Airlines are renowned for their skill and quick takeoffs. Such a takeoff permission has previously proven successful thousands of times before. The entire NTSB inquiry will make a determination about the final question of responsibility. 8 one-way incident cases have been reported since the year's commencement, 3 of which have already been assigned a Category B classification. It is hard to say when it stops being a statistically plausible accumulation, but becomes a significant issue. The current focus of media attention, at least partially, is drawing attention to something that has always occurred. The goal of everything is to avoid a history repeat.